Previously, the group had a private talk in Nova's cottage and discussed what the game plan was for dinner of the Emperor and his husband that night. In the end, they agreed it would be a good idea to try to get the Emperor on their side against Arspec, but they didn't want to tip their hand unless something was said or done to make it clear that he was for or against them. Around sundown, the group was picked up by a fancy carriage led by unicorns. They were taken on a ride through the borough before going across a bridge to the palace. At the palace, all of their eyes were drawn towards a very large and noticeable stained glass window featuring the history of the Pitor Empire and ending with the hanging of the 63. Isaac immediately could tell that it dated back to shortly after said hanging. He also noticed that several ramps had been set up for his wheelchair. They were asked to leave their weapons outside, and all of them did so without argument. Then they headed to a sitting room for drinks where Ellis, the Emperor, asked them to tell him about the mind flayers they'd fought. After they finished with that topic, the conversation moved on to more philosophical grounds. Over the course of dinner, the more insightful of the group noticed that Ellis was intentionally not asking any questions that would lead to anyone admitting to, say, being an illegal cleric or druid or anything else along those lines. Isaac asked just how much Ellis had heard about the group, and he made it clear that he knew pretty much everything there was to know about all of them. Well into dinner, Nova asked just why they were there. He didn't think they were just there to sing their praises. The Emperor snapped his fingers, and the servants all left the room. Ellis then told them that he knew his advisors were lying to him. He could tell that the group didn't fully trust him, and he didn't entirely trust them in return. But the Emperor admitted that he'd heard stories about what had happened in Port Arstone, but had been told something entirely different by his advisors. After some back and forth, where both sides were fairly vague, Ellis told the group that for the first 20 years of his reign, he'd been very naive. He trusted his advisors and believed everything they told him. Then he met Fran, and he almost immediately saw through all of the lies and inconsistencies. And when Fran started noticing those things, that's when the negative rumors began spreading about him. And that's what led Ellis to realizing that he was onto something. Around that point, Fran broke into the conversation to ask if the hunt really existed. The group confirmed that it did. When Wren started to refer to Arspec, though, Ellis quickly shushed him. It was clear that he didn't know just who might be listening in. Wren subtly referred to the stained glass windows they'd passed by earlier to see how the Emperor felt about the hangings. Ellis was very diplomatic with his response, but it was clear that the windows were still there because it would make a statement if he took them down. They passed a message to Fran asking if they could cast a spell to talk quietly or set up an extraplanar cottage to talk privately in. They were told it wasn't possible to cast magic in that room, but they could have a talk in the cottage in their guest home before the ball. The subject was changed around that point. Wren asked some questions about Ellis's thoughts on his empire, and Fran gave them some suggestions on places to visit in the city. He suggested a museum as well as the night market. And that is where we left off.